welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. I am your host, Tricia Carr. I'm really excited to share this episode with you. I have a really cool guest on today. His name is Neeshee Pandit. He is a healer overall, and he practices Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine, and he's also a Vedic astrologer. I had my chart read by him, and it was so awesome, like so deep, so helpful. I actually learned about Neeshee from Crystal Ann Compton, my best friend and business partner. Crystal had her chart read by Neeshee, and she was like, I really think you're going to like him. He is so smart. It's like so intelligent and so deep and profound and inspiring all at once. And I completely concur with that review, and even more so. So I'm actually still going through my recording. He provided me with a recording, and so I'm still working with it. And I want to move forward with him to work on with some of the healing, with some of the health stuff. So I won't give it away, but we talk about so much more than all of these topics that we're talking about here, things that have to do with karma, things that have to do with embryology, as he was discussing, the soul's purpose. And so without further delay, let me delay us one more time, because I just want to acknowledge that somehow we showed up, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, and we're wearing the same color. It's so weird. I don't know. It happens to me a lot. And interestingly, I think this must have been Neeshee being psychic with me, because this color that I'm wearing, if you're listening on the audio, it's like a kind of aqua turquoise, aquamarine color. It's actually a sort of common color in my aura. My friends, when I get readings, or friends, and in the way I see it too, see this color in my aura a lot. So I got to say that he picked up on it, and he wore a top that matched my top rather than the other way around. Anyway, without any further delay, I hope you enjoyed this awesome episode, this conversation that I have with Neeshee Pandit. And so welcome to the Charmed Life podcast, Neeshee Pandit. I'm so excited to connect with you. You gave me just such a phenomenal reading of my chart, and I'm still going through it. There's so much, and it just keeps on giving. It's one of those kinds of readings that's so in depth, and it's like a snapshot of my being, of my soul. So I'm really excited. And you're so intelligent too. So welcome, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Tricia. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate what you're saying, because that's always what I want to hear from people who I give readings to. So that's really what it's about.
Wonderful. Well, I guess let's start by, I consider myself an astrological ignoramus a little bit, but I mean,
sure.
in the, so far as like our colleagues, like people who do this work, and so, you do a lot, though. You do the Vedic astrology, and you do different types of healing. So I think what would be great is if you want to just tell everyone a little bit, get them into the work that you're doing, your journey, anywhere you want to start.
Okay, wow. I mean, there's a lot that can be said. I'll try just give an intro. I mean, yeah, people encounter me through different avenues, like astrology is one of the major things that I do, but I'm also a practitioner of Tibetan medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And so for me, I guess the common thread between all of it is healing. My interest in astrology came after I started studying medicine and practicing medicine, because when I was consulting with people, and during my internship, I felt like there was something missing in what I was seeing, what people were presenting to me as their imbalances, their issues. I mean, I felt like there was only so far I could go with them in terms of like diet, lifestyle, and treatments and such. At that time, I was not doing energy work yet, so that was another big change that came. But initially, I just felt that I knew astrology was something that was used traditionally in these systems of medical practice. And I wanted to understand what it could show me, what it could tell me about the person who was coming to me for help, If there was something that could be explained about their experience, their symptoms, their illness, that maybe didn't have something to do with, their habits of life, but maybe is an influence or a certain time period that they're in where they're having a certain influence. And, when we're talking about working with people, healing people, we need to understand why, they're experiencing what they're experiencing. What's the cause,
Mm-hmm.
what's underneath it, because just to make them feel better isn't really enough,
Oh,
So
wow.
for me, I started exploring Vedic astrology and trying to see, does that add something to this image of the person? Because I need to perceive this person as fully as possible. And I found that it really did. It just opened up a world of perception for me. And it also opened up a world of dialogue for me with that person, in which they could actually begin to understand themselves and understand a range of influence in their own life, that they could not only understand, but participate in and grow and transcend and work with. And it's a huge perspective to get,
Mm-hmm.
And it's very healing to be able to zoom out of yourself and see that what we are is really so much more complex, so much more connected to our environment, not even the earth, but
Mm-hmm.
space,
Right.
So
a cosmic environment.
That's to me like where I got into astrology. And ever since then, I started to just weave it together, and I just felt like giving an astrology reading, receiving an astrology reading is like a healing event,
Very much.
So,
I think that's so many bells ring as you talk about all of that. And and you and I actually, I know you know a little bit, at least maybe you know a lot about human design as well. One thing that Ra Uru who says, who is the channel of human design, he says we're not designed to be ill, or we're not designed to be diseased. So can you, what do you think about that? Do you see things, as you're saying, there may be some things that you see in the chart that maybe lends to what is happening with the body, and I guess even with the emotions and the mind. Can you speak around that concept a little bit? Whether we're designed to be, or if everyone has the capacity to be in fuller health?
Well, I think that's a really great statement, that we're not designed to be diseased. And that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
It's also what, Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine, Chinese medicine, all these ancient medical traditions, even if you look at shamanism, they all speak to that truth, that we have an innate balance, that health is a native condition,
Mm-hmm.
If we are in balance, we're going to be healthy. But things enter into our life, we do certain things, we break our life force, and we introduce an obstruction to the flow of life energy. So as soon as there's an obstruction to the flow of life energy, we have the beginnings of disease. But the nature of life energy is not to be obstructed, right? Life energy simply flows. Energy just flows. It has no obstruction. It has to meet an obstruction. You have to introduce an obstruction. So disease is a deviation from the natural condition. And the word constitution is really important in this conversation, I think, because when we're looking at traditional medical systems, there's often a lot of focus on the individual constitution, because we're not looking to just lay a regimen on somebody as if there's some kind of universal way to go about things, There's some general things that everybody should do that's like healthy, right? But what does it mean for each individual to be healthy? Right? That's the most important thing. So understanding our constitution is extremely important, right? And understanding how our constitution exists in the context of the larger environment is also important, because the seasons shift, the outer environment has its cycles. Then there's planetary transits. Those are also cycles. So learning how we're meant to live in harmony with the nature that we're actually not even separate from at all is one of the keys to health. And if we don't obstruct that relationship, then we're going to be healthy. If we do obstruct that relationship, we're going to be unhealthy. So I think that's really important. And the reason I brought up constitution is because, to me, an astrology reading helps the person understand their constitution and live in harmony with that, rather than saying, oh, in our society, everybody's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm just trying to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not really taking into account who I am. I'm not taking into account how I can achieve those goals, or how life flows for me so that I can be successful, so I can be happy, so my life force can flow. Those are the really essential questions. And I find that astrology can help a person see that, who I am.
And so as we're talking about constitution, or even as we're talking about health, and then I'm sure some folks' ears prick up as mine do and say, well, clearly there are people who are born with disease, or there are people who are born with what we may call something that is a challenge to the health or the structure of the Constitution. So would we say then maybe healthy or diseased or undiseased is it's subjective? How do you speak to that?
It is a relative condition.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it is the nature of manifestation for there to be limitation, right?
Yes.
For us to be born in this world is itself a limitation.
Totally.
It's not an absolute limitation, because there is the possibility for transcendence. There is the possibility for spiritual realization, right?
Mm-hmm. And
that is a process that transcends nature. It transcends the manifest world. Mm-hmm. We are manifest, and that has limits because we're going to live and we're going to die. So in the end, the body itself has to meet its end. You know, it's not an eternal manifestation. The life force is something that is not limited to the body, right?
Yeah.
It does enliven the body for a time. So that distinction is important as well. But for example, in Tibetan medicine, also in Ayurveda, it's understood that the ultimate root of disease is spiritual in nature. It has to do with a non-recognition of our real nature. Because of that non-recognition, we appear in a world where we feel separate, where there seems to be differences everywhere. We seem to exist over against our environment. That leads us to behave in ways that obstruct the natural reality that we're not over against the environment. So then we have a whole life of disease, basically, because we don't recognize reality. So that's really the root of it. Now, medicine can't really treat that level, you know? What it can treat is the body, the energy, and the mind, so that the individual can find a relative balance. And the hope would be that that individual could now, from a human foundation, pursue the higher path of spiritual realization, so that they could actually awaken to true health, which really true health is enlightenment. There's just no way around that. So as long as the karmic being exists, there's going to be disease of some kind. And those who are born, you know, with disease, for example, which is a really sad and tragic situation, we're saying literally in this case. I'm saying everybody's born with disease, but we're also talking about like genetic disease or infant disease, natal disease. And that's for karmic reasons, you know, not karmic in the sense of deserved. That has nothing to do with karma, but in the sense that we're not a blank slate at our birth, you know. I mean, I certainly believe this, and the Eastern traditions certainly speak about this, that we're like a momentum of causes and effects. And when we appear in this lifetime, we are the result of many, many causes and effects and tendencies and influences and attractions that have been shaping, you know, for a long time. So when we're born, it's not the beginning. It's not a zero, you know, it's only a zero for this life, but there's a whole karmic stream behind that. And so sometimes that happens.
And the karma
of the parents too.
Yeah, and karma is there. Well, I would, you know, you're speaking of transcendence. Like the journey is about transcendence, the limitations to be transcended, and that's what equals the enlightenment or the growth or the expansion of the being, and thereby the universe. You know, the one. So karma really, I see karma just as stepping off the path for a moment to explore, and then coming back and seeing what you've learned, or turning away from source energy or the life force to some degree, and then, you know, experiencing the free will and then bringing it back to the table for coming back home, coming whole again. And that's what karma is, right? It's not about deservedness. That's sort of an antiquated, it is antiquated. I think that was a common spiritual concept, maybe probably when, you know, a couple of centuries ago, I would say at least, when it was actually somewhat necessary for us to have sovereignty placed outside of us in order to keep us safer. It's like the infant, you know, like the infant must have the sovereignty outside of the self, meaning with the parents or the caregivers, in order for it to become safe. But we've really transitioned into a place where that authority and sovereignty is within. And but the concepts are sort of still there. We just have evolved perspectives to them, would you say?
Yeah, I would. And I always bring up that point about karma because I still feel and I encounter and people, in the Indian cultural environment and other cultural environments, that karma has some kind of link with morality, and that, that's that person's karma, that they're quadriplegic or something. And that can often be misunderstood as a very cold statement.
Right.
And that's not what it's meant to be. And people misuse that, to say, oh, they deserve that. They don't deserve it, any more than you deserve to be incarnate, in a karmic world, which is suffering. But so it's not a deserved thing. It's not a moral issue. It's just people have tendencies and patterns, and it's the nature of energy to simply replicate those things. So we have a choice to make where we want our karma to go, which is what I feel you are bringing forward, is that karma is not this like fatalistic reality. And that's something we encounter in astrology a lot. I'm an astrologer who does not believe in fatalism, that somehow the chart defines you, it does define the blueprint of your existence. It does define your constitution, just like, your eyes are somewhat deep set and your lips may be medium or thick, or your nose may be large or small. I mean, these are just set traits, right? We're manifest in a certain way. We need to understand that design, right? That's why I think human design is a nice phrase for understanding the constitution. But that's all that it is. What are you going to do from there? Where are you going to go with it? That's totally up to you. What seeds do you want to plant? You could plant more karmic seeds, or you could plant seeds that actually take you beyond karma.
Transcendence. When you think about it, and epigenetics is really showing us that in our actual genome, that there is I'm not a scientist, surprisingly, but there is a small percentage of our genes that are actually set, like the ones you were saying. I was only going to be probably, nature and nurture. I had maybe a 2 or 3 inch variability of how tall I was going to be. That's it. And I was that those are the things that are sort of set by the genealogy, but everything else is turning things on and off or responding to the genetics. And that's what kind of charts are like too. Isn't it cool that science is like doing the same thing that mystics have been doing for centuries?
Yeah, I always think, it doesn't surprise me anymore when I see science being able to describe what were formerly just esoteric realities and truths, because those truths exist in a subtler level of reality. If we accept that reality is multidimensional and we accept there's an energy dimension and we speak about those things, then that's great, right? But then you have science, which doesn't typically accept that dimension of existence, but that dimension of existence is senior to the physical. So you're going to, if you go deep enough into the physical and you describe it well enough, you're going to end up mirroring those truths, So science is often articulating things that we know to be true in a deeper framework, of the universe. And it's interesting. Yeah.
It is interesting. And the duality, it's like such that the human being is, we need both. Like we need the science that moves very slowly, very, very, in a very dense kind of plotting way. And then we also need the art or the fluidity that is with the spiritual medicine and spiritual seeking and spiritual philosophies. We need both. And as in the way we need the art in all other forms as well. But we still need both because we're still juvenile. And so we can't just go on the things that we're sensing because that's not totally disciplined yet. And it's not totally unified yet, so that we can be certain that we are working in a unified consciousness, which is why we still need the slower plotting things like the science. Whereas, we may not be infants anymore, but we're maybe only juveniles still. We're still kids.
That's right. And like you were saying about epigenetics, that we have certain things in our code, our DNA, in our genetics, So in a way, you could say that at birth, we're basically looking at an inherited condition, We've inherited our own personal karma. We've inherited the karma from our family in the form of like the genes, right? We look like our parents. Their structure more or less informs our structure. The ancestral genetic pattern more or less informs the possibilities of our genetic patterning, So we have all these inheritances, right, at birth. And so I think life is really this dynamic between our inheritances, our karmic streams, and where we want to go, our evolution, our growth process, the process in which we transcend all those inheritances, by first embracing them and understanding them, accepting them most fully, right? It's not about invalidating any of that, because you can't actually go anywhere if you invalidate it. You have to come to a place of complete acceptance of that. And I feel that is the first step in wholeness, becoming whole psychologically.
What about folks that, like myself, so I have this family, I have this ancestry and everything, but if you were to plot, if you looked at it from a bird's eye view, I was, well, they called me the white sheep. Like they were all the black sheep and I was the white sheep. And I just went on a completely different trajectory, and they're all still, mostly cohesive. And so like, I wonder if that's something that you would see in a chart, or if there's nature there or nurture or both. What would you say about something like that? And I imagine there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, you're knocking on my door. My family and I are so different.
Yeah, no, it's the same for me,
yeah.
And I know lots of people who, are like that, who represent a different kind of karmic manifestation in the midst of their family situation. And that's a very interesting thing. For me, it's very mysterious.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people have to reflect on very deeply, because at least for me, and I'm not very old, but when I think about it and I reflect on my upbringing and I reflect on my parents and the way they look at the world and the way that they kind of shaped me or were hoping that I would go in certain directions, and then the ways that I kind of went in unconventional directions, and but then to still see how they are like the root of my life force still, my parents, and over time I find more and more resonances, and I find more and more when I look back, like, wow, it does make sense, that I was born in this context. As strange as it looks from another perspective, I can see how it happened. I can see why there is a karmic resonance, and I can see how, even though they are on a different, maybe philosophical wavelength, or have a different way of going about their life, they've enabled me to go about my life. And I think it has to do with how we conceive of the function of parents, Parents are there to like be a foundation for their children's life force. And that's the most important thing. That's actually very liberating. People often don't parent that way because there's so much involved, people project onto their children their dreams and hopes. And so the child is compromised, the parent is compromised. There's all the struggle of autonomy with the child and the parent. There's all the Oedipal dramas that arise. So it's a very complicated situation, but the parent is really there to be this root of the life force. And when they're really fulfilling their function, they enable you to be what you are. They enable your life force to fully develop, and they stay at this root. And it's interesting because in Tibetan culture and medicine, they talk about how the parents form like the root of the life force, and how when one of your parents dies, you can literally feel it.
Oh, I did. So that happened to me. My father passed in 2016, and he hadn't been in my life. Like I'd visited him 2, maybe 3 times in 30 years. Like it was really, he wasn't 30 or more years. He wasn't a part of my life. So it wasn't a matter of, and I felt really resolved, truly did. The times that I visited him, all 2 or 3, I can't remember now, of those times, we thought he was passing, and I was like, let's go say goodbye. And my husband wanted to meet him. My husband and we got married. We'd been together 10 years and he'd never met my father, which is unusual for most people.
Right.
So and I actually, he came to me, I crossed him over into the light, and it was actually before his body was even expired, and I wasn't there with my family. It was so weird that when he passed, when his life force was severed from the physical plane of creation, I felt it in a really, first of all, I felt when he left his body to not go back again, even though his body was still like, being kept alive by the machines. And I was driving and it was like this goosh, I felt it. And my sister called me a minute later and I said, he just left his body. She said, I thought so too. That's why I'm calling you. And she's not like, a psychic spiritual person. Well, she is, but you know what I mean? Like by practice. And that was literally, and she wasn't with them. She was literally calling me for those reasons. So that those aka chords. Well, you're in Hawaii. You probably know aka chord, right? That's a way to say the energetic or the etheric ancestral chords. And then when he passed for a couple of days, I was so ungrounded. Like I had
Yes.
aphasia. I couldn't speak. And I didn't, he was in another state. And it was really strange, but I could feel it. And so in meditation with my guides, I asked, what the heck? Because this isn't like I was in some big grieving or mourning. This person hadn't really been in my life. And the answer I got was, a part of you, of your soul, is no longer physically expressed here. So you're basically rejiggering your life force energy. Because even though you don't have this person in your life, he was rooting my life force energy, like you were saying. Oh, I'm getting chills. Whew, crazy stuff, right?
It's very true. Exactly. And that's why, you said it,
Mm-hmm.
exactly the way that I was going to say, which is
Mm.
when one of our parents dies, and especially when both parents are no longer
Oh
alive,
gosh. Yeah.
we become vulnerable in that moment. Our
Mm-hmm.
life force becomes very vulnerable. We're very susceptible to spirit influences,
Mm-hmm.
and what in Tibetan culture are known as provocations, which are like
Yeah.
elemental spirits,
Yeah.
because when our life force is broken, there's a gap there for
Mm-hmm.
things to enter in and disturb our consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and also we just become weaker in that
Yeah.
sense. Our integrity feels slightly loosened up. And so you might notice, like when family members, when siblings, for example, have a family member who dies, a parent who dies,
Mm-hmm.
there's often incredible conflict that arises
Oh,
sometimes,
there was so
and
much. Yeah.
people just completely go, like a switch goes off for certain people, and they go into this state of psychological imbalance where their equilibrium is completely gone. And this is what they're experiencing, the crisis, and even the panic or the reaction to the experience of losing that root.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happened, and yeah, you do see it. And I have clients, people that I work with, and we'll be working for a while together because someone in their family, a parent or somebody died, and there's fighting, there's reaction, and usually the person I'm working with is like the eye of the storm and is really trying to anchor some peace and clarity
Right,
while
right.
actually going through their grieving process.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we are. It's just we have so many different, I guess we have different patterns of karma. We have so many different things that we are connected to because we're connected to the bloodline. That's a thing. We're also connected to all of the other connections that we just make mentally, emotionally. Like, if you were adopted, you would have that same kind of connection to your
Yes.
adopted parents and your blood parents, even if you'd never met them. And it's really amazing how but it does just go to show that it's all about the energy behind it. And there's energy in the blood, and there's energy in the relating and the decisions and the contracts that are made, even in the energy plane, on the just a mental emotional plane.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for the individual to find the anchor of their life force in their own life, even from an early, this is best accomplished while your parents are still alive in a way,
It's true.
because you still have the root, so it's easier
Yeah.
to be anchored and to like go and find your own integrity, on that basis. They give you that foundation, right? So that's really important. That's why people who don't consider such matters in their life for whatever reason, like most people perhaps, when they have that crisis, losing the root, it's a total downfall, because they never even considered how do I grow in my own life as like how do I evolve? How do I find what I'm here for and what I'm here to go toward? Those considerations may not have arisen for that person. And so now it's like the root is gone too. So the sense of bewilderment,
And so I imagine you can actually transition that route. So for me, I didn't have another father figure. And even though, maybe I was establishing that route, as you say, those last 2-3 visits of his life to kind of anchor it and, acknowledge the anchoring, but actually have a friend when I told the story to, and she shared with me that she couldn't relate to my experience because her father, who was not in her life, had passed and she had no experience of it. Like she didn't have any resonance with it, but she had a stepfather who was in her life from the time she was very young. So I'm thinking she transitioned to that rooting to that person. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There can be levels to it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about conception and pregnancy, the ability to conceive is dependent on the life force, the vital essence of the mother and the father.
Yeah.
That vital essence needs to be healthy enough to form the foundation, to hold the seed of new life.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is conceived, you know, in the womb, that they literally are, you know, the product of the parent's vital essence. Like in Tibetan medicine, when we talk about embryology, it's quite fascinating because we talk about how the father's vital essence forms like the spinal cord, you know, forms like the skeletal system. So in a very literal way, it's like the parents' vital essences do form our being, you know, they create the structure for our life force to enter. So it's very significant. So there's that level of it. Everybody has that, whether they actually live with those parents or they end up becoming adopted or whatever.
Right.
Then we bond, right, with certain things, like even our pets, the significant people in our lives, of course, people who fulfill the role of parents, they also become part of that, right? They also become formative. They also become a root of a kind.
Yeah.
So all of that applies.
Yeah, and with human design, as I'm seeing the father's energy creating the spinal column, it's like basically the father's energy is contributing some kind of house for the Kundalini. And then human design shows us that the personality crystal is basically shorthand, the soul chooses to attach to the body or to start to begin to co-create the body with the mother at that point, and the father's essence is about 88 days before your actual birth, I think it is. And so that's when the personality crystal actually makes its union to that physical form. And then that oversoul starts to contribute. But there's a good amount of time where it's just the parents' energies that started off as the embryo. Well, also very fascinating. So what kind of work do you do with people with the Tibetan medicine and the healing? Describe like the kind of, I don't know, sessions or way that you actually work with folks.
Sure. So several things. I mean, first thing I like to do with people is like what I call an initial consultation. You know, people will come to me for healing of some kind. You know, they know that I practice these modalities and they want to feel more balanced in some way, or they have a significant, you know, already diagnosed health condition. My first goal is to find out, who is this person? You know, who are you and what's going on and how did you get there? And what do you do every day in your life? You know, what is your goal? What is your intention? You know, where do you want to go from here? I need to kind of really get that sense of the person. And so I'll interview them. I also get a full medical history, health history. I find out what they eat, what their daily routine is like, what kind of changes they're interested in making or have motivation to make, you know, because it's not useful to lay something on people, you know, and try to convince them that this is the right thing and they're going to get better for doing it. We have to find the opening in that person's life force, right? Because like we said before, health is a native condition. So as long as we're alive, there's health is happening, right? There's some significant aspect of health happening. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. When disease takes over health, then we're not alive anymore. So there is a healthy momentum in the person. And we have to find that where their life force is already mobilized, already moving, already alive, and then feed that, you know? So some people will say, oh yeah, I'm willing to totally change my diet. Just tell me what to eat. So that's good. That's an opening right there. We can work with that, you know? I usually don't try to twist people's arms to like go against the grain, because I feel that if we just feed that healthy life force enough in them, they will naturally be able to make those changes. And then when I suggest it to them, they'll just be ready for it. You know, they'll be happy to do it and it won't be a problem. So that's my goal, is to find where can I work with this person. So obviously I don't want them eating crap, you know, I want them living a lifestyle routine that's in harmony with the cycles of nature. I want them to eat their meals on time. I want them to eat according to their constitution, their nature, their environment, where they live. Do they live in a desert? Do they live in a humid place? You know? All of that's really important. So I'll do all of that intake. And then I'll recommend, you know, here's what you need to do at the level of diet, lifestyle. Also, here's what you need to do in terms of herbs. Here's some herbal formulas that will help you. And
Mm.
I always recommend that people come for energy treatments, energy healing. So I'm trained in a form of energy healing called Wuji Qigong. I always recommend Wuji Qigong, and that's a form of healing modality I've been trained in with Qigong masters. And basically it's like Reiki, you could say, on one level, but it's also totally different than Reiki. You know, it is like a hands-off energy transmission treatment, which in China has been known as Qigong healing. And it actually precedes acupuncture. It precedes like herbal therapy. Like it is one of the most ancient forms of healing in which the practitioner directly communicates the life force to the person and helps to restore that in that person. So you could say it has its roots in shamanism, that type of work. But I really gravitate toward that kind of work because I found it to be very direct. You know, I found that I could directly work with the person's life force, and it was direct. In other words, I didn't have to mediate it through diet, didn't have to mediate it through the lifestyle. I mean, all that is important. You know, we don't want those to be obstructions, but the root of healing, the essence of the healing. Okay. So it relates a lot to what we were talking about. We were talking about birth and life and death and all of that, right? And the Wuji, what does Wuji mean? It refers to this condition, this prenatal condition. You know, it refers to the primordial condition, you know, before the birth event. You know, it is like a womb space, you could say, in which all the potentiality of the birth event is there, but it hasn't happened yet. So it represents this unbroken nature of the life force that is always there. It represents the nature of the life force before any disturbance occurs, right? So it is like a pre-birth state or an embryonic condition. And so in the treatments, people are basically resonating in that condition, you know, and that allows them actually to release a lot of karma, release a lot of the imbalances at the root, you know. So on the one hand, people need to apply themselves to a proper way of living, you know, at all levels. But at the same time, they need to deal with this very, very fundamental layer of imbalance, which is in early life, you know, and it is that birth event, you know. Birth is a traumatic event.
Yes.
It is a shock to the vital system, and it is the communication of individuation and separation and all of that, you know. It is a kind of disturbance. And so by resonating the person in this condition of the life force, you know, that's already whole, already balanced, they naturally release anything that is a tension against that, you know. So karmic accumulations, constitutional accumulations. So I consider it to be like even more fundamental than like constitutional healing. Like constitutional healing is like come into harmony with yourself, you know, live according to your nature.
Wow, this has been so, well, enlightening, Neeshee. Thank you. Really big stuff, really profound stuff. And I am definitely, I want to work with you in the medicine. You know, we have my chart. And by the way, I heard about Neeshee from Crystal and Compton, my best friend and business partner. And Crystal and I want to actually have a co-reading together of our astrology to help us with our business and the purpose that we have together. So this has been really amazing. And we'll have your links, and we have all your links and all of your information in the description here. What are some other things, any last things you want to discuss, how people can be in touch with you, or some work, some ways that they can be connected with you at this time?
I'm pretty accessible. People can go to the website, they can find me on Facebook, they can send me an email. All of those are valid avenues of contact with me. And, you know, I really enjoy working with people. I love the work that I do and find it to be very fulfilling. And so those who feel they resonate, you know, with what I do and want to explore that, I really welcome and invite them. Any
place they should start? Should they start with a Vedic astrology chart reading, or go with...
They could. I recommend people start wherever they feel drawn. Okay. If they feel like they want to go straight into the health consult and then do astrology later, that happens, you know. Or people can start with astrology and then explore from there. Or some people just start immediately with energy healing treatments.
Yeah. Right. And that can be done remotely, right? The Wuji Qigong can be done remotely.
Yeah, that's right. It can be done at a distance. I do a lot of distance treatments.
Wonderful. Wow. Thank you so much for, so much information, so much light, and I really appreciate you. And Maybe you can come on another time again. I would love it.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to come on anytime and talk about anything.
Well, thank you so much. Really such a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me, Tricia. It was really wonderful.
I find Neeshee to be just so inspiring. And as he mentioned, he said he's not that old, but he's clearly bringing through some karma in that positive sense, wisdom from that soul history. And so I believe he's going to start publishing some media, either podcast or YouTube or something like that soon. So we will have him back on sometime. And because I feel like, he's one of those people that I could just listen to for hours and hours. And I hope you can too. All right. Well, that is our episode today. As I mentioned, I hope you will stay tuned to this channel or to the podcast because Crystal and Compton and I have a really exciting program that we're about to announce, open registration for, and I would love to work with you. Another way that we could work together is with my Mystic Arts Academy. This is twice monthly workshops that I hold, as well as at least once, usually 2 or 3 times per month, group-led meditations and hypnojourneys, activations that I actually lead. And the workshops we have twice per month. They're usually on Sundays. The next one coming up is on September 6th, and it is about past lives, which is pretty cool. I had to mention it because Neeshee and I talked about karma and some of that soul history. And so if you want to join for that, you can drop in or you can join the subscription at a very affordable monthly rate, just $22. It's still right now. And we would love to have you. We'll be doing a class. Like the way that I do the classes is it's partly outlined, but it's partly channeled. And so I'm actually learning right along with you. I'm channeling the information. The intention is for it to be new, to be downloading brand new spiritual technology accordance to the consciousness collective that we bring together for these workshops, for these classes, and then to move us even further along. In addition, this particular one will have a past life journey. I will be leading a hypno journey to induce a past life regression as a group. We'll be doing this together. And boy, I tell you, when we do things as a group, even though you're in your own home having your own experience, we really have that collective consciousness online. And it's really amazing. So check out the links for that. Stay tuned and also join the Lightworkers Lab online spiritual community. You can find it on Facebook. Founded by Crystal Ann Compton, free resources. It's an education and enrichment platform. All right, with that, I want to thank you so much for being here. Invite you to like, subscribe, share, comment, keep shining your light. That is so important. Keep connecting with one another, keep loving on one another. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your experience and for connecting heart to heart with me. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.